Alrighty, welcome. I'm Colonel Denny Peoples. We're here on Casual Friday. We have a special guest, Lieutenant Andy Barry. She is from Air Force Academy High School in Colorado Springs, and she chose to come to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University here in Prescott and major in GSIS. Is that right?
Sir.
Okay, and so she's going to give you some background and a little tour of her journey of how she got to Embry-Riddle, and then now she is a commissioned officer in the military. And you know what? Basic questions. I bet they're going to want you to know how much a lieutenant makes in the Air Force when they get out. So you can go through your high school and college career. Everybody, give a round of applause, please.
Good morning. As he said, I'm Lieutenant Barry. I went to high school at Air Academy High School, and I was part of the junior ROTC unit there. I absolutely loved it. I was part of the drill team, very involved with my cadet corps, and it was probably the best 4 years. And that's what really sparked me to want to become an officer for the Air Force. So between that and being from Colorado Springs, seeing the flyovers every June for the Academy graduation, it was quite a childhood memory. After high school, I went on to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and I'm part of several of the clubs there, or was a part of several of the clubs there, including Arnold Air Society and Air Force, the Honor Corps there, which is like the drill team, as well as the sorority. So if you have any questions about college life, I have most of the realms covered. And then I went on, and as he said, I'm going to be an intelligence officer for the Air Force.
Great.
Yes, sir. So this presentation is mostly geared towards Embry-Riddle and ROTC. But as I said, if you have any questions, go ahead and interrupt me during my briefing, because you might forget it at the end. Just go ahead and raise your hand. So we are known as the best in the West from Detachment 028 at Embry-Riddle. Slide. As an overview, I'll talk about the Air Force ROTC mission and the detachment mission, ROTC requirements, the basics that you need in order to make it through ROTC. Field training, which is the Air Force ROTC's version of basic training. It's our field training. Additional AFROTC clubs I talked a little bit about that you can join, Air Force career fields, and the service commitments after you graduate. So Air Force ROTC mission. How many of you guys already knew that? To develop quality leaders for the Air Force. Okay, well that's Air Force ROTC's mission. Sorry. And for Det 028, our personal mission is to commission exceptional Air Force officer candidates by providing quality education, leadership training, experience, and mentorship. Slide. So, what do you need in order to go into ROTC? So out of high school, you need to be a U.S. citizen. You need to pass the physical fitness assessment. It's slightly different from the academy, for those of you who might be interested in going to the academy, as for ROTC. For ROTC, it's a 1.5 mile run. It's a minute of push-ups, a minute of sit-ups, and then a waist measurement to come up with your percent score overall. You need to meet those standards by your sophomore year. So we help you guys. We do physical training in order to make sure that you guys can meet the standards as far as the PFA is concerned. Next, you have to take the Air Force Officer Qualifying Test. We take this sophomore year. It's the same idea as an SAT or an ACT. It's a standardized test, but depending, some people end up having an easier time. And this comes into scholarships. If you decide that you're going to go through and you want to try for an in-college scholarship, if you don't get one out of high school, it will help you out, just considering most people do better on the AFOQT than they do on the SAT and ACT. And you have to pass a physical, just a regular medical, in order to get in. Make sure that you don't have anything that would disqualify you from being an officer in the Air Force. And finally, we're looking for people with strong moral character, people who live the core values. How many people know the core values? Come on, everyone.
Service for self, excellence in all we do.
Perfect. So, integrity, service, and excellence. Yes, sir. So ROTC time commitment. When you go through, the difference between the academy and ROTC is in ROTC you can still be that college student. You can put in as much or as little as you want in order to commission and be at the same exact point that every student in the academy becomes. At the academy, it's 100% on military training, always. So it's whatever you like better. I enjoyed going to college. I enjoyed my college experience. I was part of a sorority, which is not something that you could do at the academy. So just different experiences, what you want in your college career. It's 5 to 7 hours a week. When you're a freshman and a sophomore, you take up followership. You learn how to be the good follower who can take on orders, who can receive and do what they're told to do. So freshman year, you learn how to march. You learn all the basics, things that you know from junior ROTC. It was incredible how much I took from JROTC and applied to senior ROTC. And that helped me immensely throughout my college career. Your second year, your sophomore year, you take a history class about the Air Force, and you learn all the way back to the Wright brothers, all about the Air Force, all about flying, and you start taking on roles within the wing, within the detachment. You can be a physical fitness officer's assistant or an inspector general's assistant. So you're helping out with flight drill evaluations, you're helping out setting up for an open ranks inspection, or you're doing the stretches in the morning at physical training. So you're in charge of those, and those are positions that you can take on as a sophomore. You also have a 1 credit hour a week class. So you have 1 hour Tuesday, Thursday for PT in the morning, 1 hour class, and then 2 hours for lead lab, which is on Wednesday afternoons. For us, it's different at different detachments, different ROTC detachments. Some of them have physical training in the afternoon. Some of them have lead lab on Fridays. So it just depends on where you go. When you're a junior and senior, you take a 3 credit class. You learn principles of management. You learn all about how and what you need to do when you get to active duty, when you pin on as a second lieutenant. And at that point, you're taking on the leadership roles of the wing. You are the wing staff. You are the flight commanders, squadron commanders. You are, taking care of all the finances for the detachment, just to name a few leadership roles that you could be a part of. As I said, 2 hours a week for physical training, Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and 2 hours a week at lead lab on Wednesday afternoons. So, lead lab, or leadership laboratory, as we call it, it's 2 hours a week on Wednesdays that the whole entire detachment gets together, and we do whatever we need to do in order to teach our freshmen and sophomores how to be successful, to teach our seniors and juniors how to lead. So we do things like the LRC. Have any of you guys seen the Embry-Riddle Leadership Reaction course? It's like a giant, so you've seen it, it's a giant obstacle course. And they give you a problem. Say you have a wall in front of you, and you have 15 students that you're in charge of, and you have a 2x4 that you have to set up. And the goal is you need to get everyone over the wall without touching the little rubber chips or whatever. And you have to make it past the wall. Okay. So you go through and they time you, they judge you based on how you organize, how you end up executing and accomplishing the mission, if it were to be so. So it's awesome training device that we have. It's the only one in Arizona. And so we have ASU, U of A, and NAU coming down to use it. We use it for our summer camps. It's a pretty awesome tool to have. And next we have group leadership projects or problems. What they are is basic, you can get in a room and then you can get it done. So, hey, you're the leader. You are going to make sure that everyone's lined up by date of birth or without the year. So January, February, March, all the way through December. Or you have to line them all up by last names without anyone talking or with everyone's eyes closed or just something crazy like that. But what you learn from those is how to problem solve, how to think critically. And these are attributes that we're looking for officers in the Air Force. And then finally, we also teach AEF skills, expeditionary skills. So pre-deployment, even though it's a very basic idea of deployment training, it's how to march tactically, how to drive in a convoy, how to, if you're on a forward operating base, what you do in order to secure the border, what you do to set up a flight line, what you do, all the basics of how you get through. And if you ever do get deployed, they give you a more extensive deployment training. However, we start the skills here in Lead Lab. Finally, after your freshman and sophomore year, we send you to field training. It's our basic training, our military training. You get ranked nationwide, and they select as many allocations as they can, and they give it out to the students. And then this summer between your sophomore and junior year, you go to Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama and Camp Shelby in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And while you're there, you are put under extreme amounts of stress, sleep deprivation, what have you, and see if you can lead and if you don't crack under pressure. It's all about a training device, and it was an incredible experience that I never want to have to go through ever again. So you go 2 weeks to Maxwell Air Force Base, where you're in the dorms and you have to make sure everything is absolutely perfect and squared away. You get inspected every morning. You have 2 minutes to make it down to Reveille, and then you have 5 minutes to make it to chow, and then you have 10 minutes to eat and get back to the rooms, or get to where you're supposed to form up. Then you have 2 minutes to transit and get back to your rooms, and then you have 30 minutes to make sure everything is perfect, that all the towels are exactly the same size, that all of your shirts are 6 by 6 inch square, that your beds have the white collar and it's absolutely perfect, and they will measure everything. So it's all about stress and excellence, one of our core values, making sure that you are the type of person that lives by those core values. Some of the other opportunities that you have while you're in Air Force ROTCs, particularly at Embry-Riddle, is you can be a part of the Honor Corps, which we have a saber drill team, a rifle drill team, and an honor guard or a color guard. So I was a part of saber. Like I said, I was a part of saber. I love the saber team, and we go to competitions nationwide in order to perform. We do saber arches at weddings. We do saber arches for your guys' high school homecomings, stuff like that. It's more than a team. It becomes your family. We have the rifle drill team. This year, we just got back from Skidum a week ago, and at Skidum, they got first place overall against 7 other college teams. So BYU was there. They're always a really difficult team to go up against. There was one from the detachment that actually hosted it for Southern California. There's one from Oregon, just all over, all these different schools coming together and competing, and we came out on top. Then we have a color guard, which is our honor guard. We do ceremonies. We do, one of the pictures, we go and we present the colors for the Cardinals games down in Arizona. They could ask ASU to do it. They ask us to do it at Embry-Riddle because of the job that we've done in the past for them. And then they get these backstage passes, and so they get to sit on the field during the whole entire football game. That's just one of the perks to it. But they also do funerals, they do ceremonies all around town, all sorts of stuff. So it's quite the experience. We also do one other thing that the whole entire Corps participates in. It's called Vigil, and on Veterans Day, 24 hours prior to the parade, we guard the flag at the Veterans Hospital. So we always have 2, at least, if not 4 students out in front, making sure that the colors stay up all night. So we have to do shifts, and it's 24 hours of us out there.
How long is one shift of doing that?
Well, we have students that make it into kind of a competition, so they try and go for super long shifts. Typically, it's about half an hour. but sometimes it's as long as like 3 hours, which is pretty intense considering it's kind of cold at 2 in the morning and at 3 in the morning. So we have a good time. We are like a family. Honor Guard in that competition ended up placing 2nd overall, so they also did very, very well. Okay, so here are a couple of the different career fields that you could be a part of. Before I start going into it, I just want to put out there that depending on your degree program, doesn't really matter what your degree program is. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a specific job in the Air Force. For instance, I was Global Security Intelligence. I am now going into the Intel job. However, one of my friends who is also intelligence, they ended up getting a pilot slot. So even though I was lucky because I really wanted an intelligence slot, you know, it doesn't mean that you're forced to go intelligence. Or if you're pilot, it doesn't mean you're forced to go into the pilot track. There are only a handful of career fields that you're forced, they're called capped, and it's meteorology, it's electrical engineering, computer engineering, and then nuclear science and nuclear engineering. There are 2 degree programs that we don't actually have. So of those degree programs, if you're not within the top 25% nationwide, they have what's called capped, and that means that you're going to get that job for the Air Force. But those are the only ones. So you can be a pilot, all sorts of different tracks that you can go. Fighter bomber, you can go heavies, you can be a helicopter pilot for the Air Force. Yes, we have helicopters. They're pretty cool. I have a cousin with my same exact name who's a helicopter pilot. Remotely piloted aircraft operator, they're also pilots, but they fly the drones. Their training is out in San Antonio, Texas. It's a gorgeous base, Randolph. So they get to do all sorts of secret stuff, and they get to learn how to remotely fly. It's basically video games on steroids. So combat systems officer, which is the same as a navigator, for those of you familiar with navs. So you could be in the back seat of an F-15 telling them which way to go. You could be in a C-130, KC-135, just all sorts of aircraft. You could be flying. You're still rated. Air battle manager, these are our eyes in the skies. They're the ones who control all of our aircrafts from the battlefield in the air. They also take radar pictures of the ground, all sorts of really unique things to do for the Air Force, still in an aircraft, a modified Boeing 707. Office of Special Investigations. Does anyone in here watch NCIS? Okay, it's doing that for the Air Force is the best way that it's been explained to us. So we have an OSI guy at our detachment right now, and he does all sorts of investigations. He just, anything that could be considered a federal crime goes through the Office of Special Investigations. Intelligence, this is what I'm going into. You could be briefing a 4-star general. You could be briefing the president. You could be in the backseat of an aircraft telling them what the threats are. You could be briefing the mission. You could be just all sorts of different things. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about intelligence in this unit. Weather, being a weather officer, watching, keeping your eyes on the skies, making sure that we're able to fly and accomplishing the mission. Computer engineering, we had to put that slide in there because one of our cadre is computer engineering, as well as it's one of the capped career fields. So if you go into computer engineering and you're not top 25% of the degree program, nationwide, Air Force wide, then you will be a computer engineer. He loves it, so even if you do end up a computer engineer, I don't think it'll be the worst of things. So engineering, another big one from Embry-Riddle, just because we have so many engineers. We have students who come to Embry-Riddle as an engineering degree program student, and they decide that they want to be a pilot when they're a freshman. They fall in love with engineering, and they decide that they no longer want to go for that pilot slot because they'd rather be an engineer for the Air Force. Logistics and maintenance officers, making sure that we have everything where we need it, when we need it, in order to go and accomplish the mission. Space and missiles, this has been a big one recently. They split up space and missiles, so now it's not space and missiles, it's either space or it's missiles. So you could be launching a rocket in a day, or you could be controlling a satellite. It all depends on what area you decide to go into. Security forces, protecting the aircraft, protecting the base, fundamentals of security in the Air Force. And then finally, after you graduate, and this is a while, especially for you freshmen, but service commitments. If you get a scholarship out of high school, we have a thing called the freshman option, and it's you can drop ROTC all the way up to the first day of your sophomore year, and you don't have to pay anything back to anyone. So it's free money. So if you decide that you're in ROTC and it's not for you, then you can leave and wash your hands of it. For non-scholarship cadets, it's after you go to field training, our basic training, and then you come back. The first day of your junior year is when you sign on the line and you say, hey, I definitely want to do this. I want to be an officer in the Air Force. And then for in-college scholarship recipients, depending on what semester you end up activating your scholarship, it's typically the first day that your scholarship is activated, and it's always after the first day of your sophomore year. Commitments after you commission, everyone starts off with 4 years. So I definitely will have a job in 3 more years from now because my service commitment is 4 years out of ROTC. They trained me, they are teaching me all these crazy things, and they're going to give me a job for 4 years. If you go into the pilot pipeline, you sign on the line for 10 years. So you have a job flying aircraft and taking care of people for 10 years. For RPAs, the UAV guys, the remotely piloted aircraft guys, they sign on the line for 8 years. You get training out at Randolph. Just, like I said, video games on steroids. It's really cool to watch. I went down and I saw some of their training. And then for CISO or a navigator, they sign on line for 6 years. So you get to be backseat of an aircraft for 6 years, helping out. Yes. Some of the things that I guess are beneficial to joining the Air Force. I 100% love the Air Force. And so these are just added on top of the fact that I'm here as an officer in the Air Force. You have amazing job opportunities. You have leadership experience, bar none, and hands-on with cutting-edge technology. You are the people who are finding in order to make the next best fighter aircraft or the next greatest weapons system, or we're expecting you to deal with the greatest in computer technology, whatever it may be. You have all these awesome opportunities. You have 30 days of paid vacation a year. So you get 2.5 days a year, and you can accumulate it. So you can just keep your 30 days and keep going until you get to the use or lose point, but that's like 70 days. So in a year, you can take a full month off and still get paid. So you can go home. It's awesome. Comprehensive medical and dental care coverage. We have great medical benefits. If I'm not feeling well, I go down to the clinic and they'll take care of me. I don't have to worry about it. It's one of those things that you can add on top of the stresses that many people end up having to work through when they're just out of college and they don't have the job that they dreamed of, that you will not have to worry about. Retirement benefits after 20 years. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this, but if you're on active duty for 20 full years, you retire and you get half of your paycheck every month after that as retirement. You also get to keep your medical benefits. And then outstanding and spirited core, family bond, that's probably the biggest point for me. Being at Embry-Riddle, I was far, far away from home. I missed my parents when I first went to Embry-Riddle. I started joining clubs and they became my family. They took care of me. If I needed a ride to Phoenix, they were there for me. Or if I needed help with homework, they were the ones there to help me. Or on the opposite side of things, when my students needed help with stuff, I could help them out. I could be there to help them get through points in their life that were difficult for them. And that's probably the most rewarding part of what I did in college and what I do now. And finally, travel, cultural experiences, lifestyle is not found anywhere else. I never thought when I was growing up, even all the way through until I was a senior in college, that I would be in Del Rio, Texas. It's on the border of Mexico, but at the same time, the places that you don't expect to go, that you're not exactly looking to go, could be the most rewarding experiences of your life. You could end up finding that you love Louisiana and you want to move there, you want to retire there when you're older. Or, on the other side of things, I had 6 students when I was Sabre Team Commander. There were 3 in the younger class. Of the 3 in the younger class, 2 of them had to leave Air Force ROTC for personal reasons and ended up having to leave Embry-Riddle for personal reasons. One of them, and both of them ended up enlisting. One is going to Monterey Beach in California, and they're going to be learning Pushtun, which is a dialect of Arabic. And they're going to be a linguist for the military, and they get to spend a year in Monterey Beach, California, hanging out there. Then the other student of mine, she ended up enlisting, and she is now a photojournalist stationed in Aviano, Italy, taking pictures of the Italian countryside. So experiences that you don't find anywhere else. That's her job, is to go take pictures. I am just blown away by this. So there are so many travel opportunities in the Air Force. You get to see the world, and possibly some of the places that you don't expect to be going to or that you don't necessarily want to be visiting are the ones that end up making their mark on you. They're the ones that you end up loving the most. So the bottom line is we're here to produce better leaders for the Air Force and better citizens for America. So with that, are there any questions? No? If you can ask me, if you can ask me a good question, I have some like t-shirts and stuff from the ROTC. No? Go ahead.
What's been your favorite memory so far?
My favorite memory so far? In ROTC or on active duty?
Active duty.
On active duty, I spent 6 months learning how to fly for the Air Force. So I went through part of pilot training, and with that, probably my most rewarding experience was my Magoo solo, where I go out to an area and I get to do whatever I want to do in the airplane. So I did barrel rolls, I did clover leaps, I did aileron rolls, I did all sorts of stuff. So that was probably the most rewarding experience because I struggled in pilot training when I first started a lot. And my instructor came up to me and said how incredibly proud he was of me and how it was awesome that he knows he can trust me with, a jet going out there by myself and just tearing up the airspace.
What is your favorite part of being in the ROTC?
My favorite part of being in ROTC has to be the people. They made my life so much easier when I was going through ROTC. Like I said, I was the baby in my family. I was the youngest of 3 girls. And being away from my family was really difficult for me. But when I was a junior and I could be the family for the students coming in as freshmen, that completely changed my life. Leadership opportunities and just having that family bond.
In your ROTC, do you ever feel that you were at your breaking point, that you couldn't do it anymore?
I definitely did. I personally wasn't a very strong swimmer in academics. I did incredibly poorly my freshman year in college. And when it got to my sophomore year, when they were putting us up for enrollment allocations to go through field training, I wasn't applicable. And that almost destroyed me. They called me over winter break. So we get out late for winter break and we start back super early. So I had about 2 weeks. They called me and they said, hey, Cadet Barry, you need to up your GPA by 0.02% or 0.02 points GPA-wise. And if you can't do that, you will not go to field training. They said, you either have to take a 1-credit class and get an A in it, or you have to go back, talk to your teachers, and figure out all the work that you can redo in order to bring your grade up. So I talked to all of my teachers and I asked them if they could give me the opportunity to bring my grade up. I ended up getting 2 responses back. What I ended up having to do in 2 weeks is all of my Chinese homework over again, which is a full textbook worth of writing and all sorts of recordings of your voice and answering questions. And also, we typically got about 2 hours a night of homework, and that's 3 times a week. So all of that homework over 2 weeks was fairly intense. I didn't get much sleep. And then the second score that I was able to bring up was speech. She made me redo all of my speeches, and I had to come in and give a speech for their incoming speech class to teach how to critically criticize, essentially, a speaker and give feedback. So.
Did you take Mandarin Chinese through GSIS? Were you required to?
I did. I was in just the Global Security and Intelligence program. They have 2 different tracks for Global Security and Intelligence. They have the Chinese track and then just the regular track. The regular track requires 4 semesters of a language, so 12 credits of a language. The only 2 languages that they really allow for that they offer at Embry-Riddle are Chinese and Arabic. So it was the decision to either go to a community college and take a class or end up at Embry-Riddle. And so I decided that I was gonna go for it and take Mandarin Chinese, which was very, very incredibly difficult. There's also a Mandarin Chinese track for GSIS where you take half of your classes in Chinese. So they go to China at least 1 summer as a study abroad program, if not 2 summers. So I have a couple of students in there.
Do you ever consider other military branches, or was it just Air Force?
I did. So like I said, I wasn't exactly applicable for an enrollment allocation when I first got to my sophomore year. I knew that of the things I wanted to do for the Air Force, I wanted to serve in the military, or do for the military. I wanted to serve. I knew that. And so I started looking at the option of Army ROTC at Embry-Riddle. So I was very interested in the Army. But when I was in high school, I was going to be an officer for the Air Force, or I was going to be enlisted for the Marines, and I was completely bent on doing that. So it's all a personality thing. Like, I love the Air Force. I'm sure I would have loved the Marines, but I'd probably be a different person than I am today.
What's your yearly salary for rank you're in?
Okay, for second lieutenant, it's a little over $30,000 a year. The pay charts are online. However, that's just your pay. You also get basic allowance for different things. You can get like housing allowance. And also, depending on how long you've been in the military, you also end up getting more money. So I put in a year for the Air Force already. They gave me a pay raise at my year point, which is super awesome. So, good.
Do you know anything about living or what they'll provide you with outside of base?
As far as when you're on active duty?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're on active duty, they give you your paycheck, and then say, I'll talk a little bit about UPT. I ended up having a dorm that they paid for and they took care of. All of the utilities were taken care of, and so my paycheck was coming directly to me, and the only thing I had to pay for is cable if I wanted it, other random bills like if you have a cell phone bill. I have a loan out because I wasn't on scholarship through college. So I pay for my loans and then food. So a hefty chunk of my salary goes towards savings. You're incredibly well taken care of through the military as far as living costs goes. So.
Do you know anything about their like nuclear engineering or nuclear physics programs?
I personally don't, because we don't offer them at Embry-Riddle, but I know that they're capped. That's about the extent to which I know about their nuclear programs. So that just means, you have to be top 25% to get any job that you want. But if you're in one of those career fields and you're interested in being that for the military, then go for it. I wasn't a technical degree major. I was global security. Was that the rest of your question, or did that
And
answer?
how do you get into that program? Do you like sign for it, or do you just get lucky?
For your degree program?
Yeah.
So when you're applying for colleges, I guess, you send in whatever it requires in the application. For Embry-Riddle, this was like 5-6 years ago for me. It was like, okay, your name, basic information, mailing address, what you're interested in as far as degree programs. So it'll say, you want to be GSIS, or you want to be engineering, or you want to be a pilot, and then what minors you want to go for. And they set up your freshman schedule based off of that, and they get your input. So if you wanted to go for a nuclear program, you find a school that offers that. So I don't know what these schools offers, but say ASU ends up having a nuclear program. Then you'd apply for ASU, get accepted to ASU for the nuclear program. So it's all based on your applications for college.
What exactly do you do in your intelligence job?
I haven't actually started. I'm going to training in a week. Yes. So I'm excited for it. I'm not really sure that I'm the best person in the room to be answering those questions, but I'm going to be going through 9 months of training, 8 to 9 months of training in Goodfellow in San Angelo.
What was like your least favorite thing of being in the Air Force, doing what you're doing?
Least favorite thing. That is difficult. I love being in the Air Force. I think that the thing I am least excited about, or that I like the least, is it's a double-edged sword. Probably moving. I've made incredibly good friends at Laughlin Air Force Base, and I'm going to be leaving them here pretty soon. But at the same time, I'm also going to meet tons of new people, and I'm going to be able to travel the world. So probably the thing I like the least is also one of the things that I like the most about the Air Force is, having to say goodbye, because that's pretty rough.
How long do you plan on staying in the Air Force?
Well, they'll teach me. I would love to stay for at least 20 years. This is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I love the military. I love the idea of leading and being an important person in somebody else's life. With that, when I was in high school, I was completely bent on putting in 20 years for the military. And when I was in college, I was still completely bent on putting in 20 years in the military. However, now, realistically looking at it, depending on, if I want a family, where I'm going to end up going, what all I can do for the Air Force, I definitely want to keep doing whatever I can to give back to the Air Force. And if that means leave the Air Force, go to the civilian side, and keep going through the civilian side of intelligence for the Air Force, I know it sounds incredibly complicated, but that, I guess, would be my answer.
What do you see yourself doing after the Air Force?
Good question. After the Air Force, I didn't think such a time existed, honestly. Possibly, actually, it's gonna sound silly. I want to go back to my JROTC unit and I want to teach. So just because JROTC was the reason that I joined the Air Force, and it's where I learned everything that I ended up learning. I loved it, and it made such an impression on me. I love my school, but you have to be active duty in order to be, for Embry-Riddle, ROTC instructor, we have all active duty officers. So probably, teaching at a JROTC unit or coaching for something, possibly.
What made you want to go into intelligence?
Well, okay, so I started out as an engineer in college for my first semester. And when I joined Global Security and Intelligence, I loved my degree program. Loved it, absolutely loved it. I took classes like History of Terrorism. I took a class on elicitation, and interrogations and interviews. I took classes on counterintelligence. I took a class in forensics, how to lift fingerprints off of glasses, just all sorts of awesome classes. I fell in love with intelligence analyzing, writing, and briefing. So I like briefing. I like writing intelligence papers. I like knowing the news stories, and so that's kind of why I really wanted to go intelligence. It's kind of my forte, I guess. Go ahead.
What was your GPA when you graduated
From high school or college?
college?
Okay.
school.
Okay, from high school, it was, oh goodness, high school, it was about a 3.7. It was a little under a 3.7. I was very motivated in high school. And because of my freshman year of college, I graduated with below a 2.5 because I wasn't exactly a very motivated individual my freshman year of college, which is why I'd highly suggest if when you go on to college to not skip class. So, hard learned, and I had to dig myself out of that. Go ahead.
After the Air Force, would you ever think of opening an ROTC?
What do you mean opening an ROTC?
Like finding a high school and opening a JROTC?
Definitely. If there was an area that I absolutely loved, that I visited while I was in the military, I would definitely think about opening up a JROTC there, if it's something that was of interest at that school, because there are a lot of places that might not be super interested in a JROTC unit, where a JROTC unit might not be successful. Like I said, when I was in high school and college, I wanted to go back after the Air Force and teach at my high school. However, it's kind of the idea of, well, I know Colorado, I love Colorado, that's where I want to go back to. And a lot of people that I meet in the military say, well, then I was stationed here and I ended up loving that, and that's now where I want to retire. So, go ahead.
The security field you put on for one of the fields you said you could take for Air Force?
Security forces.
Yeah. Could that be an officer field, or is that only for enlistments?
It is also for officers, but the officers and security forces end up leading. So instead of being out at the gate and patrolling the gate, or going through and taking care of the dogs and doing all the drug and bomb tests on different things, you're going to be the person in charge of those. You're going to be thrown in, just graduated college, and you're going to have 15 enlisted personnel that you are managing and taking care of. So it is definitely also an officer position.
Were there any career fields in the Air Force that you were extremely interested in aside from intelligence?
OSI, definitely. Just because, NCIS for the Air Force, how much better can it be? I was very interested in that, and I was also interested in space, because most of the bases that space deals with are located near my home in Colorado. And then if I got missiles, because I was the last year that space and missiles was a grouped item. So you go space and missiles, and then they decide if you're going to go space or missiles. I ended up getting missiles originally out of college, and then they send me, I was hoping that they'd send me to F.E. Warren, which is in southern Wyoming. Beautiful base, close drive to Fort Collins, so, it is what it is. However, they ended up sending me to Vandenberg and then to Minot, but I ended up not going because I got a pilot slot, which trumped that. So super complicated story. Space was interesting for me, and OSI was interesting for me, as well as intelligence.
What do you see yourself doing 10 years from now in the Air Force?
10 years from now in the Air Force? Briefing the president, definitely. So, I'm not really sure, 100%. I definitely want to be a manager and a leader. I want to be a squadron commander, if not higher at that point, taking care of people, as well as accomplishing the mission as far as intelligence goes. So there are two different things that you look at while you're going through your career field. It's leadership positions and then positions within your specific field. So you can take up, XYZ intelligence positions. You can be an analyst, you can be a flyer, you can be, at the Pentagon. And then there are leadership experiences that you also have to look at as an officer. Flight commanders, squadron commanders, wing commanders, all sorts of things, directors of training, just all sorts of different things that you also have to look at. So I would I'd love to be briefing the president as a wing commander at an awesome base, but likely I'll probably be, hopefully, at least a flight commander. And I will hopefully be attached to, I'm not really sure, because I want to go through intel training before I really decide what I do for intelligence, but I'm looking at being joined up with JSTARS. They're the guys who take radar pictures of the ground in hostile areas and then analyzing that kind of information. So, in the back.
I wasn't here in the beginning, but where from Colorado are you?
Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Air Academy High. So, and then all the way over.
What's your favorite class in college right now?
Say again?
What's your favorite class in college?
Favorite class in college? I enjoyed counterintelligence a whole bunch. That was a super fun class. We got to make a presentation, or we were to make a presentation for our teacher about anything and all the security violations and how we were going to take care of that. So my group talked about Luke Air Force Base and everything that we could do to improve their security, counterintelligence-wise. And then I also loved my elicitation class and my forensics class. They were probably my favorite just because my teacher interrogated me for 30 minutes and it was probably the worst experience of my life, even though all I was saying was what I did that weekend. So, okay.
Is there courses you can take in college, like you're part of ROTC, but whatever you're going for to get your degree in college, that would influence you or benefit you with your career that the Air Force likes more?
Not at all. The only thing I could say is if you really want to go for pilot, get a couple of hours under your belt. I would not suggest, well, I wouldn't not suggest, but that doesn't mean that you need to be part of the pilot program and, get your commercial rating. That just means get a couple of hours, figure out how to land an airplane, and build that confidence. But for me, going through intel training, it's all, in hindsight, is 2020. So I didn't know I was going to be an intelligence officer while I was going through intelligence classes. But that's going to definitely help me in intelligence training. Anything that the Air Force wants you to know, the Air Force will teach you.
Why is the Air Force out of any other branch?
Why the Air Force other than any other branch? Honestly, when I was in high school, I started looking at things that I'm interested in the future, including quality of life. So, basic allowances, how they treat their people. I'm not saying that other branches treat you, like dirt or anything. However, I know of the bases that I've been to, Army versus Air Force or, Navy bases. I was most interested, if I was going to be an officer, to be an officer for the Air Force. My second runner-up out of high school would have probably been the Navy. In college, it would have been Army. And then enlisted, if I would have gotten enlisted, I would have just gone all out and been Marine Corps, so. But I think that's all the time we really have for questions. But if you guys have other questions and you have time, definitely come up and talk to me. And I'll definitely get you contact information. We have brochures in the ROTC room about scholarships, technical degrees, all sorts of stuff, and more swag that they'll probably have to give out.
I'm just going to wrap it up, guys. Please, guys, help me thank Lieutenant Barry for coming out and sharing her knowledge and